In this video, I will explain how we can set up BP2X with SQL Server mirroring. And the purpose of mirroring is to have high availability of the application. What we have here is two Windows instances. One is called main here, and another one called mirror. Main will actually host the database. All instances of BP2X, regardless of where they are set up, like whether they are set up on main or mirror, will be connecting to the main database, and the main will be mirrored on the mirror instance. If main goes offline or dies, then mirror will take on the responsibility for handling all database actions until such time when main is back online. I will simulate through this demonstration or video the inadvertent shutdown of mirror and then the inadvertent shutdown of main, and see what happens in each scenario and how we actually roll back to the initial setup, meaning that the main database is on main and the mirror is on mirror. Before we proceed, I want to explain what you need to do in SQL Server or on Windows instance where SQL Server is installed to make sure that mirroring succeeds. It is preferable to set up SQL mirroring on a domain with domain accounts, user accounts. However, because it's easier, just use the same username and password to start SQL Server instances or services, and use those to do the mirroring. In my case, what I've done is I have two separate instances of Windows, and each one will have its own username and password set up for the SQL instances. Let's have a look at what we have set up on the main machine. As you can see here, I've set up a user called SQL. Now that user is a member of users only, so not a special user, nothing special. However, if we access the services and we browse to SQL instance, SQL service, so SQL Server, and double click on that, you can see that this account is used to start the service. Now, evidently, because SQL Server needs access to certain specific directories, like the one I'm going to show you soon, like the data, for example, where the databases will be stored. If we look at the security here, you will see that the SQL Server user is on the main machine, has full control over this directory. So this is how the SQL normal user is capable of reading and writing to the database files. So the same thing is set up on the mirror instance. So you will see that we have the same user SQL with the same password. So I've intentionally set up the users on both instances with the same username and password just to make sure that mirroring works. So if we look at the local users and groups, SQL, and it's just a normal user. And if we look at the services, SQL Server, you will see that again we use the SQL login. Now remember, this SQL user is set up in the local users and groups for the machine mirror, and on the main the user is set up under the main server. So they're two separate users, not the same user, but they have the same username and password. Now, to set up mirroring, I'm gonna close these. I'm gonna open the SQL Server Management Studio on both machines, and I will swap between them. It makes it easier to see what's happening. So we've got here, I'm connecting to the mirror instance, and here I'm gonna connect to main. So I've got the main instance here on the left and the mirror instance on the right. The first thing I need to do is check the BP2X database. What I'm gonna do is first I'm gonna back it up. I'm gonna do that to test, and we'll call BP2X.back. I'm gonna do a full backup, hit OK. So now I've got a backup of BP2X. So if we go to the folder C test, I've got BP2X. I will copy it to some common folder. So I'll copy it to this common folder, and I'll pick it up from here. Okay, I'll make a copy and I'll move it to this folder on C. Now on the mirror database, the first thing I need to do is tasks restore database. I'm gonna restore it from a device. I'll point to the file, the backup file I just copied, which is BP2X back. Now here you have to be careful of a couple of things. Under options, make sure that you restore with no recovery. Okay, you can override the files, that's fine, but make sure you select restore with no recovery, otherwise mirroring will not work. So I've restored successfully, so you can see that BP2X says restoring here. So BP2X is restoring on the mirror instance. We'll go back to the main instance, and now what I will do is I will select task mirror. Now first thing is I need to set up the security or configure the security. I'm going to click next. I'm not setting up a witness server, and the witness server is used to automatically fail over if the main database fails. The witness is a third, typically is installed on a third independent machine. It's again SQL Server. It should have SQL Server on it. It doesn't have to be a full standard edition of SQL Server. It can be the Express edition. However, I'm not going to use a witness in this setup. What I will do is I will write my own application that will do the automatic failover. This way I can install it on the mirror data instance or mirror server. For the time being, just click no, next. The principal server instance is main, and it's listening on port 5022. The endpoint name is called mirroring. I'll leave it as such. Next. The mirror server instance, now here I have to select mirror. If you can't see mirror, just browse for more. Make sure you select your second instance. I'm gonna choose SQL Server Authentication, and here I click next. Now because I'm not using domain user accounts, I'm gonna leave those as empty. And because the server instances for SQL are running under the same username and password, it should work. So next, and click on finish. So as you can see, I have 2 success messages. What happened here now is it's gonna prompt me to whether I should start mirroring. I'm not gonna start mirroring. I'm gonna click it manually, and the only reason is I want to change the principal to a full domain name. And the way I've set up this, again, I don't have a domain server set up. These are 2 instances of Windows Server. What I have done, however, is I've installed under roles. I'll just show you what I've done. So under roles here, you can see that I have a DNS server on the main and in the forward lookup I've set up something called SQL.local, under which I've created two A records, one for the main server and one for the mirror. And you can see that this is pointing to 10.1.190 and mirror is pointing to 10.1.191. These are static IP addresses that I've set up for the network cards on both. So if we look at the network card configuration here, what we will observe under the TCP IP configuration is I have a static IP, but what is important is that I have a preferred DNS, and the DNS is pointing to 10.1.190. 10.1.190 is the main server. So if I go to the mirror server, I should see the same DNS set up for the network card. Okay, it's 10.1.190. Okay, so now we should be set up. So let's get back to mirroring. Okay, so all I've done is I've just typed .sql.local after the main. Now I can press start mirroring. However, note that I have selected high safety with automatic failover, which is synchronous. What this does is it has to commit changes at both the principal and the mirror during a transaction, instead of caching them or queuing the modifications or changes on the main server and then applying them on the mirror server asynchronously. If applying asynchronous transaction changes or changes to the main server on the mirror server is faster than doing it in a synchronous manner. So if you have your mirror server set up on a WAN in some kind of a remote location, you might want to select high performance asynchronous. However, note that in an asynchronous mode, if the main server crashes before the transactions have been replicated on the mirror server, you may lose some data, whereas with the high safety you don't lose data. So whatever has been committed will be on the mirror server. I'm running those on the same network, and it's a local network and it's quite fast, so I'm going to leave it as high safety. Again, remember, I don't have a witness here, so I can just click start mirroring. And when I do that, as you can see, mirroring has succeeded. The failover button here is just for you to do manual failover. I'm not going to do that now, so I'm going to hit OK. So if we go back, I'm going to close this. If we go back here, I can see that BP2X now is a principal and it's synchronized. Okay, here. If we go to the mirror and I refresh, so I just pressed F5. BP2X is a mirror, synchronized and in restoring state. When a database is in restoring state, I cannot connect to it. So if I click on new query here and I try to query the BP2X database, I'm not going to be able to see it in the list of databases. Whereas if I click new query here and I can see that it automatically selected BP2X for me, which means BP2X is available for querying. So if I do select star from media, I have nothing. So what I will do now is start the application on the main server. So I haven't shown you this, but when I set up BP2X, okay, and if you look at any of the configuration files, I'm going to show you the same file on the mirror server. I'm just going to pause recording until this is done. Okay, so as you can see, the connection here is password, SQL, user ID, SA, BP2X, and the data source is main. That's great. However, the data source here is mirror. That shouldn't be the case. It should be changed to main. We should change this in all config files on the mirror instance, because mirror should be connecting to main. So what I'll do is I will change those now. there's another change that we have to do, but I'm just doing it one step at a time to explain what happens. Main and one more config file, which is this guy, and that should be main2. Just remember, this is the service, so we need to restart it to pick this up. Okay. Typically, this should suffice for both mirror and main to connect to the main, both instances of BP2X on mirror and main to connect to the main SQL Server instance. However, what we've done here is, if the main instance crashes, then mirror will fail, and so will the instance on main. That's because the main database no longer exists for whatever reason. And if the whole PC crashes, then I lose BP2X and SQL on main, and there's no way for mirror to connect to mirror unless I change this data source back to mirror and I restart the whole of BP2X instance. What I want to do is I want BP2X to pick up this change or this failure in the main data source instance automatically. To do that, there is a setting in the SQL connection string that I need to change. Okay, what I need to do is I need to add one more setting. Failover partner equals mirror. I will copy that. So what I've done here is I've specified that primarily the connection should be done to the main SQL server. However, if main fails, then it should connect to mirror. Okay, and what I need to do is change it for all config files again here. So what I will do is we'll do that. So I'll change it here. I'll change it here, and I need to do the same thing again on the main database, on the main server. So I'll have failover partner equals mirror. That's when that's remote player. And we need to go to the host service. Now, because we've made changes to the host service, we'll restart it. So what we will do is we'll go to services and we'll go to broadcast power, and I will restart this one. I'll do the same here. And it hasn't started, so I will start it. Okay. So now I've set up BP2X. Now what's gonna happen, I'm gonna run broadcast power on both machines. So I'm gonna show the desktop on this one. I'm gonna run the remote player here. At the same time, I'm gonna run remote player on main. Now both machine instances will start up broadcast power. So you can see this one. Okay, this one is saying that I haven't configured the now playing web export plugin, so I will do that. We'll go to files, go to plugins, and template file, test.out, or just put out.html, test, file encoding, we'll put it to ASCII, and then select which media type you want to export. I'm not going to select anything because I'm not too interested in this plugin at this time. I just want the application to start. So what I will do is I'll repeat the same process here. So okay, so the BP2X is running here. I'm gonna close this one, and I'm gonna close this one. When you close it, it just stays in the taskbar, as you can see. So now I can run the client here, and I can run another client here. Now remember, these are two separate instances of remote players, so you can play something on the mirror server and then play something else on the main server, and they will both register in the database what you have just played. Okay, I'm gonna show. Let's try something now. Because this is the first time I run Broadcast Power, the main user interface is disabled. Okay, I'm gonna run it here to show you that the same thing is happening here. Okay, it's disabled. I can't click on anything. I don't see the timers. I'm gonna close it, come back to the main server, tools, users, queue player control, and I'm gonna add full access to administrators from any machine to control the players. Now if I start this one again, because I've granted administrators access from any machine, as you can see, I can see the timers. Okay, now remember I changed those from black to white. Let's see what happened on the mirror server. Great, I can do this as well. So you can see I have now things being replicated. So if we go to jingles, let's copy some files first, MP3 files, so we can see what happens. Okay, if I pick up VBox, I've just created some audio files. So what I'll do is I'll copy them locally somewhere just to make it easier. So I'm gonna, just to keep it simple, copy it to the desktop here. I'm gonna do the same thing on this machine. Just copy audio to the desktop. They're just like 18 files, and I don't care much about audio at this stage. I just want to see what happens. So I'm gonna open this. I'm gonna pick up Avicii or whatever that is. Okay, I've got this one here. So what I'll do is on the main server, I'm gonna pick up Avicii, put it here on this button. Okay, I don't have an audio device here, so it's not gonna change anything. I need some kind of an audio device setup. Let's see if I can do this before I continue this test. Tools, settings, audio devices. There is no sound. It didn't detect any sound. So if we go to control panel, we go to sound. Okay, let's do that. I'm gonna leave these as is, and we'll have to fix it here as well. So control panel, small icons, sound, yes, and that's it. Now we should be good to go. Let's have a look again. So if you go to jingles, just grab some audio file and place it on this one, so you can see it is already set up. I'm going to change it to some kind of a brown color with a green plus. Okay, so you can see the color change here. Now if I come back to the mirror, I right click and say reload jingle page, so you can see it's green. Now if I do the same here, audio here, and I change this to this icon with some kind of a blue violet, I don't care. Okay, so I've got blue violet here, and I right click here, reload jingle page. It works. So basically now we have synchronization happening. Now what we need to do is, let's simulate that SQL Server on this machine for some reason stopped. I'm going to go machine pause, so there's no access to this machine anymore. If I come here and check what is happening, I'm going to press F5. Okay, it says BP2X mirror disconnected in recovery. So it is disconnected, which means there is no connection between the mirror database and the main database. If I try to do anything here, it might fail. So if I go, for example, tools, settings, and I try to do anything, like I clicked on settings, I get an error because there's no database connection. I'm going to continue here. Let's go move back to the jingles, for example. Again, it's gonna fail because it can't read anything from the database. So what we need to do is trigger the failover. Remember that I'm triggering it manually here, but instead what I will do is we have to set up some kind of a service or install a witness. I mean, remember the witness which we've mentioned when we were setting up mirroring. You have to set it up for this failover to occur automatically. But what I'm doing now is I'm doing this manually. And what I will do under my setup is I will create a service that will monitor the databases, the main database, and if the main database goes offline, it will automatically fail over. Okay, so what we need to do here is you need to type the following command: alter database, the database name is BP2X, and I'm gonna set partner force service allow data loss, and run it. Once the command completes successfully, if I refresh here now, F5, it says in recovery. Give it a few seconds, and this depends on how many transactions are still pending and stuff like this, but eventually this is gonna change to principal disconnected. Okay, so now the mirror server is the principal server. So if I click here on players, queue player, okay, nothing's happening. So it couldn't connect to SQL, says a network related instance specific error occurred while establishing connection to SQL Server. Let's see the details. What is it trying to connect to? Okay, so it's using named pipes, it's not using TCP/IP. For this automatic failover to occur, you need to use TCP/IP, so we need to make sure that we're using TCP/IP. That's the problem here. Okay, so what happened here is it didn't automatically fail over after we've done the triggering of the failover, because I mean, even if I quit the application and restart it, I'm still not gonna connect. So let me show you what I mean. Close, yes. That's if we try to start the application now again. Remember, that's because of the setting, so we have to fix the configuration files to use TCP/IP instead of using the pipes, named pipe. So I double clicked on BP2X, and as you can see, it's just hanging here. Okay, now I've got a connection, it seems. I've got a connection. So if I click on broadcast power, okay, so this is not responding, which means we still can't get a connection to the database, as I suspected. Here is that we have somehow this is picking up, this is not picking up a TCP/IP connection, so we have to tell it to use a TCP/IP connection. So what we need to do is specify the type of network connection we want to use. So it's here, network library equal DBMS SOCN, and this means that I want you to use TCP/IP. We'll have to do the same for the remote player. And we'll do the same for the business objects. Again, remember, we have to start it, restart the service. Okay, and now let's kill this instance, and we'll kill this instance. Again, see, we got the same error, SQL error. Now I'm gonna run the remote player host this time and see what happens. Okay, so it's a success. Let's have a look at the client now. Let's wait for the dialog box to pop up. Okay, now we try username and password. And now, as you can see, we've got green bars. This means that what we have here is the green bars means that we've connected successfully. Okay, so now we're back in business. So if we go to settings, see, I've got my settings, my users, I go to my logins, and I can go to players and queue player, and everything is fine. And remember, if I go to jingles, I should still see my other two jingle buttons displayed, because the ones that I've just set earlier, see, they're still there, which means mirroring is working. So I'm very lucky so far. Now, to if when the main database comes back online again, you can see it says mirror suspended restoring, which means now the main server database is the mirror and not the other way around. To restore it back to its original state, what I will need to do is I will need to do a manual failover. Okay, so we right click tasks, mirror on the principal, and we have to resume mirroring, meaning that the principal, which is mirror, has to send its data to the main database, because now the main database is online. So I'm gonna resume. Yes. I'm gonna wait for it to synchronize. Okay, now it's synchronized. It says synchronized. Okay. Okay. So we need to do the manual failover. Task, mirror, and I'll do failover. Yes. So it closed all the connections. It says disconnected. Check tasks, mirror. Okay, it is. So the principal is main and the mirror is mirror again. Now if we refresh here to see if it's disconnected, it says mirror synchronized restoring, so it is synchronized again. So we're back to how we started. Now that we're back, so we switched databases. Let's see, is BP2X still functioning? Yes. So if I click on administrator, excellent. So it's still working. So if you go to, for example, songs, media editor, player, Q player, let's drag a song and drop it from my audio. Oops, if I drag and drop DJ Amor here, it's okay, I've got it here. So this is now playing. I'm gonna raise the volume a little bit. Okay. So we can see that this is playing now. So that's excellent. So we did the swap over, and this instance on mirror didn't stop. Now if I launch BP2X here, because my server is back online, let's have a look. I'm gonna open this with songs, so you can see this DJ Amor here. I'm gonna put it here. Okay, I need to restart BP2X here on this machine for me to the database is working, by the way, without restarting the application, but I have to restart the application because when I changed the audio files it didn't pick them up. So now I need to reinitialize the audio devices, because I changed I enabled sound or audio devices after starting the application. I should do it before starting the application. Now everything works as normal. So now you know how to do the failover and failback. Stop the Windows WinUI 32. Okay. So what happened is in my config file I haven't changed. What I have to do is specify that I want a TCP/IP connection, which means I will have to specify the network library. So network library equals dbmssocn. Okay, so let's close this one and go to the remote player. Okay, and then the WinUI. Okay, so this is done. Remember, we have to go to services, restart. I'll go to just double click on remote player, wait for it to start. I'm gonna also start broadcast power, the WinUI client. Wait for broadcast power to start, and now I can okay, so it's a green bar. That's good news. So it's gonna start now. Now I should be able to play my audio files from it. And if I go to my jingle page, excellent. So I've got everything functional. So this is how you set up mirroring with BP2X.